I remember the 2000 Winter Olympics. We were working in Park City. So it literally was during those times we were checking the system. Don't pick up the phone. Don't pick up the phone. We were dialing in to a 57.6 modem to check out the system and make sure everything was going. And that was the running joke was, it was a 5-story building and everybody running around going, don't pick up the phone.
Don't use the phone. Leave the line clear for safety of your own life and the lives of others.
System monitoring, that brings a lot of anxiety to a lot of people. It could be a challenge. It could be a great asset. We talk about all the different flavors that we can come up with to make system monitoring provide benefit both for programmers and end users. All that and more on A State of Control. A State of Control, episode 122, Don't Pick Up the Phone. Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. So today's episode is going to be one that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. Way back when we started putting devices on the network, we started adding something called remote monitoring and remote access and support, but monitoring platforms have been around for probably over a decade, and we'll get into talking about those and with a few people that I think have a lot of great insight to share with us. And before we get to say hello to them, I get to say hi to my partner here at A State of Control, Rich Fregosa. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing good. I think by the time this episode airs, that skeleton behind me, the 12-foot skeleton behind me, will be up and will be full tilt, almost ready for Halloween. So now it begins. My office is actually part of the staging area for our Halloween extravaganza that's coming up.
So you're saying we probably need to do a Halloween show?
Oh yeah, that might be next. That's it. Or we'll send after photos to attach to the episode, right? The full view.
Absolutely. Well, we get to welcome back one returning guest, and we get to say hi to a newcomer here. But the returning guest is Nick Miller. He was last with us on episode 112. If you haven't heard, Nick's been a great contributor for many episodes. So welcome back, Nick.
Hi, thanks, Steve. Great to be back.
And last but not least, we have a newcomer who I know for quite some time. His name is Craig Underwood from Moravian University. Welcome, Craig.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Good to be on the program.
Thanks for being with us. So, as I mentioned, system monitoring, when people hear that, they think of a lot of different things. And it comes in many different flavors. There's many that are driven by manufacturers. There are many options that are more generic in the IT realm. There are many that can just be a little bit more primitive, but quite effective. So, Rich, I'll kind of let you frame this up for us. It used to be something that was nice to have, but are we getting to a point where system monitoring is a must-have and is something that not only is important to people that are putting in systems, but even more important to those that are managing and owning these systems?
Yeah, and for very simple reasons. 25 years ago, the devices that we were connected to were not connected to the internet or to any other outside ecosystem. So 25 years ago, when you put in an RGB H&V switcher and some monitors and an ISDN video conferencing system, those were pat. There was no such thing as firmware upgrades, right? You didn't have a firmware upgrade. You swapped the equipment out and new equipment went in. So the mean time between changeouts or updates was much longer. Years. The cycles were much longer. So once a system in its analog state reached stability, you were only dealing with kind of the big failure items, right? Power supplies go, or a board goes. I mean, something big that prevents the system from operating, period, that would require a replacement or a repair. because software ate the world, now there are so many variables out there that are outside of the control from when you get checkoff, right? You get checkoff, system is operating, everything is doing what it's supposed to. And then, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you our unified communication platform completely reinvented itself this year. And so now, why doesn't anything work? So the ability to intercede and the ability to diagnose and the ability to go, oh, that's what happened, is because the timelines have sped up and so many other outside forces could affect the operation of your system, because it's not the control system itself that necessarily change. It's everything in the environment around it that is possibly on these pillars of shifting sand. So it's necessary, because again, all of a sudden, if we had our last episode of Cloudflare outage, right? Something goes down where a device can't access it, you could send crews out all day long, and if they can't be scheduled until Wednesday, well, this whole thing ended in 24 hours. So now it's a matter of, well, it broke. Why did it break? Well, we know part of why it broke, but we don't have any answers necessarily now because something else got resolved. So the ability for instant diagnostic, instant reporting, instant trouble warnings. What's happened is that outside of the enterprise, but just daily life, people are used to notifications now. And so not having that notification option is now starting to come into the industry. And it's a good conversation. We've always asked for it. We've always wanted it. But, the answer was always no, 1,000 times no. And originally it was because they maybe didn't necessarily have the bandwidth, or we didn't have the technology to do it. Now we're at the point where the options are open. Now it just becomes a matter of picking flavors. And so, yeah, it's there's no reason not to, is my feeling. But it's because everything else evolved so quickly, that, it's just, it has to be part of what we do as a business at this point, and to be able to relay and say, we want to be able to help you, because you're also a partner in this. Being a partner in this means you're also a point of trouble in this.
That's a really great point. I just wanted to jump in here to expand on that, because a lot of what we do with our remote monitoring isn't necessarily tied to, is the device broken or not working, but it's, are you using it correctly, or is it being used correctly? Or like if the user's trying to do something and they're having trouble, how can we gather information quickly remotely to help them solve that problem immediately? So for example, on our campus, if they call us with a problem in a classroom and we're like, well, the dashboard says the projector's fine, the touch panel's fine, nothing's broken, but they're like, well, I don't have any audio. So we can very quickly say, oh, well, do you have your audio output set to the right, to the HDMI output if you're plugging into the system, instead of your internal speakers, things like that. So, or are they even getting a signal into the system? So is the signal detected, right? So we're trying to align the monitoring with the most common questions that we get. And we found that the most common questions that we get aren't necessarily, are things broken, like I said, but are things configured correctly? So one example, like I said, with our systems, we monitor for signal presence. So if they call up and say, oh, we don't have anything on the projector, like, well, we can see immediately, well, there's no signal to the projector. So is your laptop plugged in? Another example is like in Zoom. So with Zoom's dashboard, a common question we get is, oh, they can't hear us on the far end. Something's not working. And so we can go into the Zoom dashboard and see exactly what audio device they have selected for their microphone. So we can very quickly respond, get them working. So again, nothing is really broken, but they're not quite using it right. So then that helps to inform us, like, well, how can we design a system to better prevent these in the first place?
Nick, why don't you jump in on this too? Are we, and Rich talked about, people's expectations of, immediate response. and Craig is talking about, having the information that we need. How much of this is proactive versus reactive in terms of system monitoring?
Yeah, it just depends on what side of the equation that you're on. From a systems management standpoint, it is being proactive and as much as possible and getting ahead of issues before your end user discovers them. I always stress on these topics the importance of in-band as well as out-of-band monitoring systems, where from a control system perspective, you have your in-band signal flow and metadata that you gather. But then there's the important aspect of out-of-band monitoring. Can an external device ping a network device that you're communicating with? And that gives a lot of insight as far as where an issue may occur. Your control system may think situation normal, everything's good. But if a device if your video conferencing system can't reach out to the internet or some other metric that wouldn't otherwise be caught by just a control system centric monitoring platform, you're in for some failure opportunities.
Craig, you mentioned several different platforms. Zoom, you said, and you talked about being able to maybe open up a web page for a particular product or go to a dashboard. Is that something that is the way that we just have to expect that these things are going to work, or is there more of a need to unify these solutions together? Because I guess it kind of comes down to the idea of you use several apps on your phone, or do you have one that you can go to that can control multiple things?
Yeah, good question, because I'm finding that so many of these devices now have their own app, their own cloud monitoring, their own system, their ecosystem, so you can monitor that device. And of course, we have, for example, Crestron Fusion RV, QSys Reflect, those sorts of things to get a better picture of the systems. But yeah, even between having some Crestron system, some QSys, a BIAMP system, this or that, it'd be really nice to have something that could look at everything, or at least give our initial IT help desk a method to just see everything from one big picture. So that is something that, with a small crew, over time, we kind of gather up all these great tools, but then how do we make these tools easily and quickly available to everyone who might not know exactly what is in a classroom? I might know that, this is a BIAMP room or this is a QSys room, but they got to call into the help desk. The help desk analyst who has to know everything about everything initially to triage might not know that that's a QSys. So they might have to look up on a chart to see, which room is this? I got to pull up this platform to look at that. So that, I think, for us anyway, as a small school, that I think is going to really be the next step, is to make all of these tools accessible so that we can respond proactively to the alerts and the monitoring and the trouble calls that are coming in.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's a yes and question. The idealized vision of the single pane of glass is great for monitoring purposes, especially for kind of your tier one support technicians. However, it's always going to be kind of the lowest common denominator of all of your overall systems view. So I think that is step one, is having just kind of your broad overview, your 10,000 foot picture, if you will, and then being able to drill down into the individualized ecosystem dashboards, which are going to have much more detailed tools and controls to manage things from.
That's an interesting point, because I like where you're going with that, because it's sort of like where we talk about having a control panel that has user controls and then you have tech controls. I think that's kind of a good analogy to that, I would think. So Rich, one of the things that has always been a sticking point with making a monitoring solution work has been the programming required, because there was a common thought that these systems just worked out of the box, but just like control equipment, they get you a starting point, but you need to actually you program them to make them do what you want or to meet the needs of the client. Are we at a point where this is becoming this conversation is becoming more meaningful? Because I think that there are a lot of people who have had bad experiences because no attention was given to figuring out what actually needed to happen to make a monitoring solution work.
A big part of the pushback was that prior they were one-offs. The funny story I was thinking about it is that I remember the 2000 Winter Olympics. We were working in Park City, and we were getting some things done, and we had to leave the project. Things were getting, people were getting ready to move in. The events were starting. There's some things to check in, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was taken care of. It was it was one of our high impact clients. So it literally was during those times we were checking the system. Don't pick up the phone. Don't pick up the phone. We were dialing in to a 57.6 modem to check out the system and make sure everything was going. And that was the running joke was, it was a 5-story building and everybody running around going, don't pick up the phone. And beyond that, it was just, it just wasn't easy to be able to access things remotely. And there was no reason to. I mean, the people that are in enterprise or in school and court systems, whatever, they're already overloaded with their work. And for the AV guy to come in and say, hey, by the way, we need to, we want to be able to get in to do X, Y, Z, that answer is no. And Nick brought up, the perfect answer earlier before recording when we were dealing with InfoSec, and InfoSec's answer is just no. It's always no. There's never a yes that comes out of there. A big thing that's happened now, 4 years post-pandemic, is that it was a tidal shift that occurred. It created an industry and it created an expectation of remote access, because no longer were we getting the technical pushback, because it was done. People had to figure it out. It was one of those instances where the end user, our clients, had to figure it out. We had been asking for it forever, but now there was a reason for them. What is it? Only the consequences of your actions are great enough before it changes your behavior. So the consequences were big enough that all of these market segments, our verticals that we deal with, went, okay, we got to figure it out. Yeah, we do have to learn how to make it secure. Yeah, we do have to learn how to lock things down and silo, all of these different versions, because marketing has to come in one way. Development is on the other side. Sales is someplace else. The C-level suite has a different level access. Well, that's no different than an AV subnet at all. And so now what we have is that ability to have a conversation to say, we just want to work within your existing structure. Prior, we were asking them to make a structure, and that was never going to happen. They weren't going to allocate the resources to it. So, I think that from the programmer standpoint, from the integrator standpoint, I mean, that is absolutely the first thing that we do. And, we were talking about it. We still deploy remote access kits. Every project that we do, that's the first thing that happens. Is we send it out, because if there's multiple sites or, their project slows down or anything else, our first response is, you don't want to pay us and the travel costs and the incidentals and everything else to be sitting there and feeling bad and then complaining about our bill when something happened over here that was outside of your control. Nobody's efficient. So rather, let's find ways to work efficient to save you money, which saves the end user money, and all of these things, and give you not only the same level of support, but a greater levels of support, because it's instant. We have the ability to go, give me a minute, I'm going to check. So, it really is, for integrators, we were so beat down to not ask for it that, you're so gun shy, that this is now that opportunity, because it will make your company that much better. It will make your company that much more valuable, because you no longer are going to be getting those gripes, which was, well, we called you for this problem on Tuesday. You just said that you can't come out until next Wednesday because you don't have crews available, but we also have a shareholders meeting in 48 hours. So now everybody's scrambling, and it's tiring. And it's that fire drill that keeps on going when you can stop and say, we have solutions now. And whether they are individually provided solutions by the company or you're going through greater options, that's just a matter of scale. That really is just a matter of going, okay, are you going enterprise level deployment that you want that? Do you want something more regional, or do you want individual? And from the programmer's standpoint, you're just able to work on more jobs and get things done quicker and better, for just a variety of reasons. That I mean, for me, I just think it's insane if it's not one of your first conversations from the beginning, so that by the time you are getting ready for commissioning and deployment and after, it's not even a thought. It's the, oh yeah, no problem, we've got it covered. But doing the groundwork before, you do not have that conversation after you've said, here's the keys. It's already done at that point. You have to go ahead and make it part of your identity and the reason why you're the value add. Again, it's, and also, again, if you're a smaller shop, it's what sets you apart from larger organizations too, is to be able to provide a level of care that really a lot of these, when they jump around from company to company to provide services, what do they always talk about? Is we want to feel like we're heard. We want to feel like we're important to you. And if you're a smaller company, those are the roads in.
One of the greatest benefits that we have received as an industry from becoming more software defined and network centric is the ability to approach those conversations much, much easier than we would have in the days of serial and other baseband proprietary communications protocols. We can walk into an InfoSec or a CIO's office and have the conversation about remote access because that's the language that they speak. And so it becomes table stakes to lay out your offerings as far as here's how we can monitor, manage your systems, whether it's done in-house by the customer and the end user, or whether whether you do it as a managed service provider after the sale and after commissioning. It's just become kind of the expectation as opposed to a value add that that needs to be sold to an end user.
Yeah, I agree. And that what I find is interesting is that I'm hearing all of this. I heard, Rich and Nick, you talking about, the value add and everything. And I'm thinking, I really wish that in a way that we could bill for our services, but I'm thinking an integrator would have a field day in being able to demonstrate value to bill for some of these services, because I'll give you one example. So that I wish I could bill for, right? So we had an amplifier just fail in one of our athletic fields, of course, like a week before opening weekend here, and there's a game coming. So, we can't have the athletic field not have a PA system, right? So ordered an amplifier, and long story short, the time at which I had to physically install the amplifier was towards the end of the day. I really couldn't make noise to really ring out the system to test it out. It was after hours. So, but what was really great, this new amplifier I got had remote, some really detailed remote applications to it, so that I was actually, again, condensing the story for brevity, I was actually that weekend in a car dealership with my daughter, helping her buy her first car, and I'm on my iPhone fine-tuning the gain structure of the amplifier as they're, an hour or so before the game with our athletic director who's operating the system. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. I installed the amplifier, I did the physical fix, but now the actual tuning and commissioning I'm doing for my iPhone. I'm like, this is pretty neat. somebody should be billing for this, but I can't because I'm the in-house tech, right? But I was able to do it. So that it's just a tremendous service offering that, like, now unfortunately they expect. They're like, let's text Craig. Oh, he can do this. He can do anything with this stuff now. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way.
Well, and that feeds into the responsiveness and efficiency of work, in that it opens the door for lower level hands to be able to do some of to take care of some of the physical side of what we do, while the more skilled, more technical aspects are centralized. And we're seeing that consolidation happen now, especially with the larger integrators. But it's just, as time marches on, it makes the overall operation more efficient.
I like that a lot, actually. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, how do you demonstrate value? And I think you've just said it. It's just a matter of recording that and being able to have a comparison of, this is what it would have looked like had I not had a tool like this.
Yeah, exactly. It really saved us. There's a couple other things where I've remotely rebooted devices that are PoE all the time by logging into our network management console, cycling the port. Okay, it's back up and running. Great. Without those tools, gosh, I'd be so much less effective. But just having those tools available to very quickly resolve issues has been tremendous. Just keeping our educational operations consistent and seamless so that there aren't interruptions in class. And so people aren't saying, oh, the camera isn't working. Oh, it's the technology again, right? So we want to, just completely cut that out of being able to be an excuse. The tech has to work. People are canceling classes if the tech doesn't work. They're not going back to chalkboards and whiteboards only. The students just check out. So yeah, having all of these tools is just been tremendous. And yeah, there's no going back.
The last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is as we said earlier on in the show, more systems are being software upgradable, and there's also a lot more of them. And there's also more of a need to be able to be thoughtful in the way we deploy updates. Nick, I think you have some good experience with this. Can you share a little bit about how you have utilized these tools and be able to understand where others can do the same, to be able to provide a more confident approach to updates, so that we don't fear doing either firmware or updated software?
Yeah, because of standards and protocols such as SNMP, we have a lot of insight into the parameters of a particular piece of multiple pieces of equipment. And one of the things that we focus on a lot is unification of firmware across device types. And with systems that have hundreds, if not thousands, of potential endpoints of multiple varieties, having a centralized view and centralized management portal for those software and firmware updates is critical. There are lots of solutions out there to at least monitor the status of those things. Sometimes deployment is really up to the individual manufacturer and how efficient that you can go about that. But by leveraging some of the what used to be more enterprise level tools, it's fairly simple to keep an eye on the current state of things and monitor as upgrades are in progress. Basically, just keep a running spreadsheet of exactly what's going on, where the system sits, because in most scenarios, when you're at that type of scale, it's not an all or nothing proposition. You're going to have rolling updates. And in most cases, even if you could, you wouldn't want to deploy 100% at once, similar to the larger enterprise software vendors that'll do a trickle or rolling rollout when they first release it, when they first put out a new release. Every iPhone doesn't automatically get updated at the same time, and there are huge reasons for that. Those early adopters that want to get in on the first day can go in and manually update if they so choose, but it takes weeks, if not months, for Apple or Google or whomever to roll out a new version of software. I think we've seen the consequences of not doing that recently with CrowdStrike and other national media-worthy examples.
Absolutely. Craig, as we wrap up, where do you see this going? Yeah, like what would you like to see? What types of tools, what types of capabilities would you like to see in the future when it comes to remote management?
That's a very narrow question, right?
We're giving you a wish list now. You're a first-time guest, so you get
Sure.
you get to
Well, thank
dictate
you.
the future.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be really great to have a way to configure easily what you want to see per person. So I'm just thinking about my little world here and what we have to deal with. So, take that with a grain of salt. But just having certain texts be able to configure what they want to see, the alerts that they need to see, versus also being able to really dive in deep to settings that they shouldn't necessarily have access to. For example, the gain structure in an amplifier or DSP that I might get into, but the entry level techs don't necessarily need to just to have a system working, right? Having those tools available and easily accessible, more easily accessible, I think it's trending in the right direction. So don't get me wrong. I think then there's a lot of great tools out there already that we're using. But I think looping in other non-AV people into our world, or maybe it's the inverse. Maybe we need to loop more into the IT world, which I think, of course, we're doing. But the standards based and having all of the various different platforms under one umbrella, I think, would be really great. Like I said, instead of having to go to multiple different sources to get all this information. So that's my wish list. I have a lot of things.
I like that. Well, thank you for joining us, and this was a great conversation. And as we wrap up, Rich, you can share your final words and also let people know how they can reach you, learn more about what you're up to, and keep this conversation going.
Honestly, I'd say is, if you're in control systems programming, learn the tricks so that you don't have to sit on a bucket using a piece of equipment's cardboard box as your desk. There are a lot better ways to do it now, just because that's the way that we did it. And you'll hear us old timers tell you, if it was good enough for us, it's good enough for you. Be smarter about it, be smarter about it.
So we're saying everybody's getting soft.
Exactly. But, this one is definitely, if you're not having a conversation about it in your organization, you need to, because it's just a better way of running business for your clients, for yourself, just for your well-being. I'm just the physical toll of not having to constantly feeling like you've got to go ahead and hit a site physically or anything like that, and the stress that comes with it. So, there are lots of options out there for manufacturers, third parties. You can self-source yourself. But if you, and especially in this day and age with the way that our industry is changing, this should be, the tip of the spear for you as a company if you're not doing it. If you do want to find out more about how we do it, you can go ahead and check out our site, fregosadesign.com. You can check us on the interwebs. But first and foremost, as I always like to say, I hope that you find me here on AVNation.tv and all of our suite of shows that cover all of our verticals, here with my friend Steve, who was actually on Resi Week just recently. So he rocked it on there. He's going world style, Steve Greenblatt, all over the place. But just go ahead and hopefully you find us here and support our sponsors.
Absolutely. Nick Miller, thanks again for being with us. How can people get in touch with you, keep up with what you're doing, and also continue this conversation?
I've actually been a little bit less social than I would like to be, so maybe this will be the inspiration to get back into it. You can find me at Nick Mill on just about any platform out there.
Excellent. And Rich, you missed Nick and I got to spend some time in person at CEDIA, so we missed you there, CEDIA Expo, that is. But I look forward to the next opportunity. And last but not least, Craig Underwood from Moravian University. How can people get in touch with you, learn more what you're up to, continue the conversation, and also congratulate you on your first time here on the show?
Yeah, thank you again very much for having me on the show. This was a fun experience. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. Just search for Craig Underwood, Moravian. You'll find me.
Absolutely. And Craig does some teaching as well. So he's got a lot of things, and he's also involved in HETMA. So throwing all those things out there. So different ways you can find him. For me, you could find me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. And as Rich said, definitely check out avnation.tv to learn more about everything going on in the world of AV, and including several different podcasts and news and articles and so forth. We are, if you don't know, if you're listening on audio, we're on video on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, check us out on your favorite podcast player. We're all over. But until next time, this has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Erin Marmoran of EdTech. The world of higher ed AV is growing rapidly. That's why each month we hear from the best and brightest from colleges and universities all over the U.S. Check out EdTech on avnation.tv or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.